Yeah.
We're recording for training, everybody. We're going to be doing Out of the Shadows.
Oh, that's awesome.
Sorry, Kennis, I'm just going to be awkwardly here like this.
If you want to be like, no, let's face on.
I gotta be close enough to you.
Okay. All right, so I know that a lot of you were at the sneak peek, so I'm gonna try to do a bit of a mix of recapping the show for people who were not able to be there, and then try to leave some time for questions and conversation, more like a Monday musing, so that we can talk through some of the questions you might have been getting if you're leading tours, or just things you notice or have questions about in general. So overview of the show. This is a show of works from our permanent collection. So we own all of the works. The museum owns all of the works in this exhibition. We have a lot of different printmaking media here. We have at least 10, depending on how you count overlap of, we have a lot that are aquatint and etching. So depending on how you count those. There are 83 works in the show in total, and the 7 women artists are included as well. So the media that we're including are woodblock prints, wood engravings, dry points, etchings, lithograph, lino cuts, silk screens, aquatints, and monotypes. We have at least 4 groups of works that are 2 or more of those techniques at once. So the way the show is grouped and organized is sort of by the way that we were thinking about ways that prints were used throughout history and had an important role in society. So the first one is, a first one is this group here, which is sort of scientific illustration of animals. That was really important use of printmaking starting in like the 1500s, and still can be used in that way today. This group, we know that when people come in, I take some issue with this, but there have been studies about when people come into a gallery, which side they go to first. And I think it's to the right, isn't it? But I'm left-handed, so I always go to the left. So this is where I go first. This is a group that is focused more on the different printmaking techniques and kind of explaining how each of those is done. So we have an aquatint, we have a monotype, woodblock, color woodblock, which is a unique type of print, and then a big text panel that explains all of that. Also new is behind Sage here, we have portable versions of that same text panel. When we did the sneak peek, someone suggested to me that we have that printed so that people could take it with them as they walked around the show. So we did that. It's in English on one side and Spanish on the other. So if you have any Spanish visitors, Spanish-speaking visitors, you can make sure they know about that as well. We'll probably put a sign next to the big version soon so that people know what that is and where to find it. So the fish is a very fun piece. People either love it or hate it. And that is a fun experience to talk through that with people. But it's the only example of a monotype we have in the show. And that's kind of one reason I like to start with it, because a monotype is just something that you cover in ink and then you smush a piece of paper against it, right? You can only print it one time. It's unique. But it is a type of printmaking. And it's interesting because one of the distinct advantages of printmaking historically was that it was a way to make multiple images the same. So a lot of times you have like artists or artistes who are very into monotypes because it is the one impression. But the fish is fun and unique here. I won't do every stop along the way this time. So we'll just talk about big groups. And we'll go this way. This series is fun and I hope interesting. It's a series of throughout the steps of Rungus creating a print. So we have the first state. Each image gets more elaborate as he goes and more developed. So you can see his thought process a little bit. This is how an artist would build up the shadows in a dry pointer print. This wall kind of from here, not really. That corner specifically is a lot of images that we're sort of grouping together as being religious scenes, mythology, spiritual history kind of themes. So we have the Dur Saint Jerome and the Adam naming the animals, and the Satyr and the Diana. So this wall more religious, that wall more mythological. The case here is examples of unframed prints and tools that were used to make prints. So we framed about 13 pieces for this show that were previously unframed. And these were works that we thought would be really interesting and we wanted to include, but we weren't able to frame everything that maybe we wanted to. So the case was a good solution. It also lets you get up close and personal with objects. And I always think it's fun to see the pairs of the plate and the print that resulted from it. So it kind of gives you an idea, like a lithograph is literally on a stone. And so the resulting image has certain qualities because of the material it's printed on. We didn't have a printed version of the copper plate, but a lot of the etchings and engravings, all of the etchings and engravings would have been made on a metal plate, much like this. It also gives you a good sense of how printmaking is a process that works in reverse with most processes. So when you are the artist drawing on the stone, you have to think about that and know that the image you're making is going to come out in the reverse. Sometimes with things like the photogravure, there are multiple steps that reverse the image. And so that's even more complicated, that you have to remember how many times it's going to flip. And so compose your image with that in mind. Great, we'll go on in here. This wall here and this huge long wall here are grouped together in the sense of conservation. All of these images were made with animal conservation.
Oh, Vicky, I can't hear anything now.
No, my screen's frozen.
I can't hear anything now, Vicky.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I
I
can
hear you
now.
and in the middle.
Do you, Vicky,
No,
do you
but I
have a
just-
Vicky, do you have a picture?
No, I now it froze.
Okay.
I don't have a picture of you, Vicky, but I've got a picture of Joni, but I lost the whole.
Okay, it's
lecture.
coming back.
Oh,
It's not
there it is.
reconnect.
Apologies, everybody. My computer died. We're good now.
Sort through
Now I see it now.
so many different titles.
Yeah, I do too.
Even it's printed with the title in English and French and Spanish. But the name that is often given to it has to do with an Aesop's fable. So come back to that. Yeah. The group here on the wall, some of you might have seen others from this group in the past. They have been out. These are illustrations by Picasso from a 17th century or 18th century natural history text called the Histoire Naturelle. The bird paintings on the wall here, not paintings, prints, but of the colorful birds in the middle are the original illustrations from a volume of that same text. So in the early 20th century, a publisher in Paris had the idea to get Picasso to do like an artist version of the book. And he picked individual animals that he wanted to do into this kind of condensed volume. So we tried to pick animals that had not been out previously. And that meant some of the more domestic animals, which is a little more variety for us, which is nice. We'll keep going. This group, sort of loosely, we started to think of it as being the hunting images, which isn't entirely accurate, but they are some of the more historic prints in the show. We have the Rembrandt in the center here, which is very exciting. Barry, who we know from the gallery, and Stefano Della Bella, who have one of his prints in that piece there. This section is about Western expansion and the role of printmaking in kind of spreading word of new of parts of the world that people weren't traveling to themselves necessarily. So as we know about Moran and all of those guys, they would come west, paint, watercolor, sketch, and then come back east and make these images and then share them around the world. So at the end, there's a map. And we also have over here a $1 bill, I think. 10, thank you.
Is it real?
Yes.
Somebody asked me that if it was real.
Mhm. So I like drawing attention to these because I think it is a great reminder of how printmaking for a long time has been part of daily life. We not so much anymore with our phones, but we used to touch these images every day, use them to get around. It was part of society and an important part of what helped society work as a whole. This group here is similar in the sense of spreading the word, but this is really specifically highlighting the role of printmaking in newspapers and news. So we have illustrations in weekly publications like Harper's Weekly, political cartoons. That lithography was really, really important in making that possible and making that a really popular medium in our culture. And even before that, we had illustrated broadsheets that would be put up around cities and let people know about exciting things like the arrival of the first elephant in London, or rhinoceros. So in the center here, we have two prints that are prints of paintings. So in this sense, printmaking was used to popularize and share images of artworks that people, everyday people, maybe wouldn't get to see or be able to purchase. So the Bierstadt, there are a number of versions of the Bierstadt, as we learned at the sneak peek together. One is in DC, and I think one is in Cody. And the Watson and the Shark, another very important famous painting that exists in two images, in two versions in Boston and in Washington, DC. So printmaking was really important in democratizing art and information, spreading the word through illustrated books and making everyone be able to have access to that. Yeah.
This may be a naive question, but how much does an artist practice before he produces a work? I mean, like they're doing prints, they're doing this is like the original.
Yeah.
Is gigantic.
It is.
I mean, how does the process evolve? Does this come first? Does the painting come first? Does the
Great question.
sketches come first? What's the methodology that an artist uses?
Yeah. Oftentimes prints are made by specialist printmakers. So in both of these cases, the artist was a painter, and then he would send the image or work with a printmaker who would actually transform the print into, or the painting into a print. And actually we have the same thing kind of in reverse with things like the Audubons. We know that Audubon painted the paintings first, and then the work that we may know as being the Audubon is the print, but the painting was done first as a model for the print. So artists usually specialize in one or two media that are similar. Rembrandt, we know, was also a painter and a printmaker. Like he is known for his etchings, but part of that is because etching is such an easy medium to work in as an artist. You don't have to have a lot of specialist knowledge to like carve into the plates or mess with all the chemicals that you need for a photogravure. With an etching, you cover it with resin, you draw in it with basically a metal pencil, and then you take the plate to a printmaker and you say, okay, here you go, please make 150 copies. So Rembrandt did his own plates, but the printing process was done by someone else.
In silk screening, like Andy Warhol was a silk screen guy. I mean, how long does it take to get an original thing, or how many of these do they make, or doesn't the silk get clogged with the ink and you gotta clean it, or, I mean, it's not, right?
Yeah, those great questions. I don't know myself if Andy Warhol did his own pulls, like did his own prints. It again is a very specialized process. The silk that they use is probably washed every so often to like clear the ink so you wouldn't get clogged in that way. But you would have to dry each layer between applying the next layer. So it would take it's not like an immediate thing where you do it all at once. It's not a laser printer.
So Andy Warhol could have contracted with somebody to do this.
Yes, I'm not sure either way if he did that or didn't do that, because that is the medium he's most known for is silkscreen. So it may be that he did that himself. But a quick Google should be able to answer that one.
I mean, he was a wild and woolly guy in Lower Manhattan. They were
Right.
hanging out, we were doing a lot of partying.
Yes, yeah. Cuts into the printmaking time, I'm sure. Yeah. So maybe with whatever time we have left, if you've encountered any questions from your groups, or if you have any questions about or want to talk more about any particular piece, we can totally do that.
Can we talk more about the Marvin Oliver ones?
Yeah, totally.
Because he did the totem, it's kind of nice to point that out to visitors. Because he also did like school buses.
Too fast.
He did glass. He was one of those artists who did,
When you say he did school,
he did art on school buses.
Oh.
When you Google his name, you'll find he decorated school buses for art. His medium was a lot of the time whatever he could get and he worked with glass a lot.
okay.
So he was a big multimedia guy.
Mhm.
And I never knew he did these. And those are kind of carving, kind of like what he did.
Mhm.
And that's nice to point out to
Mhm.
visitors.
A lot of different, I find, because I'm a sculpture fan, a lot of printmaking processes are very sculpture related, like engraving and etching all depends on making grooves in the metal that you're using to pull the print. So these are the two prints that Lori is talking about, the Marvin Oliver prints. You'll know that name because he also made the totem pole in the lobby next to Palette. So he's an indigenous artist from the Northwest Coast. And these are silk screens, so tied in with the Andy Warhols that we were just talking about. But actually only this portion is a silk screen. This is embossed. And so I was talking to Tim Musso, who was here for the Bull Branson Award this year, who is a printmaker. And so he helped me understand kind of how these would have been made. You would want to do the silk screening first. No. Yes, yes. You want to do the silk screening first because you don't want to put pressure on the embossing once it has been pressed into the paper. So you would sort of have like a steel or metal plate with this pattern carved into it, and you would push the paper into that to create the sculpted almost shapes. This is not ink here. There's a little bit of ink added around the edges here to kind of give a shadowy effect. So you would do that in the silk screen process as well, or you would apply it by hand maybe. So with silk screen printing, each color is applied in a separate pull. You have to make a different screen for every color. So what that means is there's this little bit of red. He would have to make a whole screen that red to produce that one piece of red. And so you would block out cover the whole screen apart from this one little swirl of red with something that blocks the fabric, that seals the fabric. And probably you would still need to make this, you wouldn't just do the screen this big because it's a small piece of color. You have to do the screen the same size for every color because you need to make sure that it lines up exactly every time. Because if you even are just like a little crooked on your screen, all of the colors are gonna be off. And so it won't line up and make an image that makes sense. So this one would have 3 screens and the embossing, so 4 passes. This one I have counted in the past, I think it's more like 10. So the black, this navy, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And then the embossing. So it's quite involved. When we had a work at Western Visions this year of an eagle overlooking a canyon, which was I forget what she called it. It was a type of woodblock printing where instead of printing the different colors one at a time on different blocks, you would print one color on the block for all. If you're making 100, you do 100. Then you recarve the block for the next color. So you have to know which color you're using the most of so that you don't carve away too much, and you have to know the exact order. And she said, I think she recarved the block something like 16 or 20 times to make that one image. So it was a really intricate, complicated image. And it was beautiful, but you wouldn't necessarily know that that was the technique. It could have been done in that other way. So she just said she liked that way. It made more sense to her. So
Why are there so many different types of printmaking?
that's a great question. As different technologies developed, they would find new and easier and cheaper ways of printmaking. That was often a big factor. So woodblock was likely one of the first to be developed out of printing on fabric. You could still do it today in a lot of cultures, paint on the like flower carved and then print it on the fabric. But wood breaks down pretty quickly when you're doing it under a lot of pressure hundreds of times. So then metal technology was advancing a lot in the early Renaissance. And so engraving developed, and then etching, and then lithography, but without the stone, they were using metals. So at every step, it became a little easier and a little cheaper to do it. Silkscreen is very cheap comparatively, and a lot less labor intensive. So
this is how like magazines were done in the 70s.
Mhm.
you know, and ads. That's what my dad.
How is it done? What do you mean?
Like,
They were printed. on
right, and
printing
those
press.
metal copper plates were what all
Okay.
the ads were done on. And then they'd do a strike off, and then it would go to whoever's ad it was for approval. And then they'd use special magnifying lenses to check color.
Mhm.
It was just part of that process.
Mhm.
It's crazy.
And
to think
now,
about it.
an interesting example of the furthest development of that is laser printers are now what we're mostly using for printing, right? But the kind of art name for a laser printer, functionally, it's the same process, is a giclée. So the panda image there is a giclée. So it is the most, contemporary, most advanced type of printmaking, but it's also the one that kind of is most removed from the artist, right? The artist probably never touched that herself.
Isn't it digital? Is that digital? I mean, I would think there'd be computer generated
Right.
digital.
So she probably designed it on, I don't know this, I don't know this for sure, but it looks to me like she designed it on a computer and then had it printed by a very advanced, it's a laser printer. It's a very advanced, it's beautifully printed. It's very rich color. The finish is very nice, matte, very art quality. But she may not have ever touched that object.
And why is
Whereas
it called giclée?
giclée, yeah.
And that's French?
Sounds-
or
It's
something?
French,
Sounds
yes.
good.
Mhm. Whereas, a lot of these artists, if they're carving the plates themselves, or if they are more involved in the printmaking process, like part of the value of the Durer and the Rembrandt is thinking these things were in the presence of those artists, right? That's very exciting to us to think that 400 years later. But that might not be the case. I think I'll take this as my cue that I'll pass you off to Jane.
Any final questions? Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Kennis,
Thank you,
for
guys.
speaking on that. I'll see you in like a little bit.
They do that with like.
On hold.
So they are still filming the introduction right now.
Uh-huh.
So I don't want to make a lot of noise at that end of the hallway. Maybe
Here?
I'll shut the door. Maybe I'll shut that door. I think. I'm gonna
Okay.
shut that. And then I-
Hi, everyone. We're now going to have Jane speak to us about Tony Foster. And we're gonna be moving along. So sorry.
Yeah, we're gonna start at that end. Wiley's shutting the door because they're filming an introduction to the next Spice and Pass video out there right now. So we don't want to make too much noise out there.
I'm getting my workout for today.
So that's why I asked if you could shut the door, because I know they're filming. Thank you. Okay.
Oh, here, I'm gonna come to this side. I'm learning the best angles.
Okay, and I'm gonna talk about that piece, and then we're gonna kind of.
It's okay, I just follow you. Don't worry about it.
Okay, okay.
That's just cute. Kenneth's leaving. If you all want to gather around this way, Jane's starting down.
Yeah, you can come closer. We're gonna start right here looking at this piece, and then we're gonna kind of ping pong down the hallway and finish way back by the video screen back there. And everybody, if this door is, I know it's normally open for free passage, but we've closed it because they are filming an introduction to Bison Cast with the trees right out here. And so we don't want to be too noisy while she's doing her introduction to the next Bison Cast episode. So, yes, here we are in the Tony Foster exhibit, which is called Tony Foster Watercolor Diaries from the Green River. Some of you have already been giving tours of this space. It's a beautiful exhibit. It's all contained right here in the King Gallery. It starts at this end, this is the beginning, and then it ends down where you see the video at the far end. And it is arranged this way because it's a journey down the Green River, and this is downstream that direction. So this is the headwaters, the beginning of the Green River. The Green River starts at the Green River Lakes, which is in the Wind River Mountains. If you look at this map, this is probably the easiest map to look at. You can see that up here, this red dot is the Green River Lakes. Here's the Wind River Mountains, and the water flows from Green River Lakes into the Green River, and it continues south. It continues down here is where we're crossing into Utah. It angles tiny bit into Colorado, and then it comes back into Utah and continues all the way down past Moab, where it runs into, what lake is that? Colorado River. Yes, I'm sorry, I said lake. River is the Colorado River. So here's the stretch of this journey. The title, Watercolor Diaries. Tony Foster, who will tell you a little bit more about him in just a little bit, but he does these watercolor diaries on these journeys in scenic places around the world. A lot of them have been in North America. He's not from this part of the country. He's from the UK, from Cornwall, and he has done, I think this was his 19th journey. So he's gone to all kinds of scenic places and recorded not only with his paintings, but also actually writing diary entries along the way and collecting souvenirs along the way, which we'll talk about. But these red dots along this map here show the location of the paintings that you see continuing down the hallway here. So if you ever wonder, where am I along the river? You can look at the map and see where the red dot is. You can see it's way up north, right at the beginning. So this is indeed Green River Lakes. It's the beginning of the journey. And this is a great one to talk about because it's unusual. He works in watercolor on location, plein air, and which is, not many people, they do small little watercolors, but to do something this size is really unusual. Each of his pieces includes 3 components. There's the painting itself, which sometimes is large and sometimes is smaller. It includes what he calls a souvenir from that place. In this case, it's the Shoshone beaded necklace. Sometimes it's a fossil. Sometimes it's a little sketch that is a souvenir. Sometimes it's a vial of mud or dust that he's collected. And then the third component is the diary entry itself. So you can see his pencil writing. He's transcribed the diary entry for that location for the day or days that he was there as the third component. And because his handwriting can be sometimes hard to read, you can always read the same diary entry in the label next door. So those 3 components are really important, and each of the images has all 3 components. Another thing I wanted to mention here was he didn't do the journey like in one fell swoop. He didn't start at the Green River Lakes and end in the Colorado River. COVID was right in the middle of this journey, and even if it hadn't been, he probably would have broken it up over several years. At least a couple of years. He goes back, he takes a break, he goes back to complete the journey. Some of you who have been around for a while might remember that we had another exhibit by Tony Foster. It was in 2005, and it was called From Icebergs to, does anybody remember? From icebergs to something. Anyway, it was a few different locations, and it was in the big gallery. Yeah.
Is there a name for this style where you incorporate diary and souvenirs and paintings in a
Oh,
Foster style.
right.
It's not a comment.
I mean, in some ways,
It's not a
his
comment.
work reminds me of Thomas Moran
Yeah.
and his watercolors in
Yeah.
Yellowstone,
Yeah.
because Thomas Moran would make little notations, like you can see down here, he's saying, you know, shaded area, he's talking about the light, and Thomas Moran did a similar thing, tan, yellow, reddish tone here, notes to himself. And Thomas Moran kept a diary too, although it wasn't framed within the same image. But
This is a gigantic frame to carry around on a hike. Isn't it? I mean, this is watercolor.
so the watercolor paint, you would have carried the watercolor paper big, of course, like that, rolled up and in a metal tube. And then we'll see when we get down to the far end, there's the glass case has his materials in it. So you'll get to see how he, you know, traveled light and how he packed things up. But yes, he'd roll up his paper in a metal tube to protect it. He would bring, you know, tiny little pans of watercolor paints, brushes, a container for, or a bottle for water, and a lid to like a Tupperware container for mixing his colors. Very basic, very simple, very lightweight. Now, you might wonder, how do you work with a big piece of paper like this and support it? Like, what do you do for an easel? And he has a custom made board that is his easel that he puts his paper on, and it's hinged, so it's like 3 sections. It's divided into thirds, so it folds up, and he can put it on his back, strap it to his back, and hike to these locations. So some of the locations, he would camp everywhere. It really was a camping trip. Some of the locations, he's right on the river or right on the lake in this case. Others, he had to hike up 400 feet to a good vantage point and look down. So he really has to have everything on his back to go up to some of those higher vantage points. Another thing I wanted to mention to you about him, you know, for the bigger paintings like this one, he would spend, you know, usually about 6 days in that location. So sometimes it would be just for part of a day, they'd stop and he'd do a painting for the smaller ones, but for the big ones, he would, you know, set up in that location and be there for 6 days and maybe 5 nights camping. And in that case, he'd start with a pencil and he'd sketch everything in its, you know, where it belongs. And then he would start painting. And he said he's not like John Singer Sargent, where you can do a few big brush strokes and describe it, but his method is inch by inch by inch, filling in with the colors and the paint. So he talks about that if you watch the video at the end.
Is he still living?
He is. He's 78 years old. Well, when he did this project, he was 78 years old.
So when is he coming here?
He was here when this opened.
Oh, shoot.
I know, and I don't think he's planning to come back anytime soon, because he is from England and because he travels around and does all kinds of things. But I
Does he
told
paint
you,
in England also?
he does. Yeah, and he said, you know, during COVID, he was exclusively painting around his home area in Cornwall. But most of his journeys, feel free to walk through if anybody who needs to walk through. Most of his journeys have been in North America. And I like to think that's because we have the most beautiful locations in the world, but he's gone everywhere. He's gone all kinds of places. Yeah, 70 years old, 78 years old now. He's been doing this for 40 years. The first journey was in 1982. And so, like I said, this was the 19th journey. So he's done a lot of these. We looked at the map. We talked about that. Oh, how did he travel? So some sections of the river, like especially up north, he was in a raft because it's faster moving water. And that was the best way to go through fast moving water. And then when he gets down, let's look at when he gets down around Dinosaur National Monument, around Vernal, he switches to a canoe because it's flatter water after that dam, and he can cover ground faster in a canoe. And he was with friends, he wasn't all by himself. And in fact, on this trip, he had a videographer with him who was documenting the trip as well.
Really interesting.
So that, yeah, not all of his trips have that video component, but this one did, which really adds a lot to it. And if you take the time to read the diary entries, he talks about how difficult it was, sometimes really hot conditions, sometimes really cold conditions, sometimes very dusty, sometimes very muddy. He complains about other people snoring in their tents at night. So it really was an interesting journey. But let's continue down, and the next one I want to stop at is this one right here.
People love the video. I always see people
Yeah.
sit in front of it.
Is that right? Yeah. I'm glad that they did put in a nice big screen down there.
Yeah.
Draws you down the hallway as if you're going down there to end up down there. Okay, this one is called Steamboat Rock from 400 feet up a cliff. So you can see that they would have arrived on the river, on a raft, and then they would have made camp somewhere down here. I don't know where exactly. And then he had to hike up 400 feet up to this vantage point to get this beautiful landscape from above, looking down. And he says, I love to read some of these. This was April 29th. He said, I had to scramble to the top of the mesa, bushwhack across a precipitous vantage point to set up. I started drawing on the 30th of April, hiked across the mesa. He came back the next step and he said he couldn't find his spot. And he had to hike around for a while until he refound his spot. And then he stayed there. He talks about how he struggled to paint because there was so much going on in this particular landscape. He paints all day long, and then he finally dismantles after 6 days and he resumes his journey. Wow, that's what he talks about there. Let's look at the souvenirs at the bottom of this one. You can see there's a little map of the area, and there's also a fish fossil. So all the fossils that you see as souvenirs were ones he chipped out himself from the rock. He went to the Warfield Quarry, which is nearby, where you're allowed to legally collect fossils. You have to pay, and you go in there and they show you how to do it, and they give you safety goggles and they give you a pickaxe and they say, go for it. And he said he got interested in these fossils. Even before this journey, he knew this was a good source for fossils because he said he used to go and buy them for his friends on their 50th birthday. And he'd say, here's a fossil, you old fossil. And he said, these are 50 million year old fossils. So they were gifts for people who were turning 50. So he knew about the fossils from this area. These are the same, it's the same area where the fish fossil tiles that are across from the auditorium. It's the same Syncline Lake, I think is what it's called. It's where you get those fossils. So if you're ever interested, you too can go to Warfield Quarry. And
It was by Cameron. I went to one by
Did you go?
Cameron,
Yeah.
and there's a fossil national park, but the ocean was there, and you pay like $5.
Yeah.
They give you a hammer, a chisel, and a pile of rocks, and you do find these things. They're all over the place.
Yeah. Nice.
And you bring them home, they're in sandstone though, and if you don't preserve them, they fall apart.
Yeah, right. And because as most of you probably know, Wyoming was all under the ocean at one time, many years ago. Okay, we're going to continue downriver, get back in your raft. You might be switching to a canoe soon. And let's stop at
I don't hear guys, there you are. I don't hear people floating down that river. You don't hear the whoosh.
Yeah, I know. Have any of you here floated any parts of the Green River? Yep, Bill has. What sections?
Got me on that. The Green River,
Yeah,
all I know.
okay. Yeah, most people do certain sections are much more beautiful than other sections. So if you look at Tony Foster's map, you can see he did a lot around Vernal, around Dinosaur National Monument, where it kind of dips into Colorado. And then he also did a lot down near Moab. So I think those are probably the two most scenic sections. Okay, yeah, yeah. So I wanted to point out this one. This one's called Upheaval Dome. So Upheaval Dome, a hike to the Green River, he calls this one. And notice he says, what's included within this frame is watercolor and graphite on paper, meaning just pencil, because he would draw the scene first. But it also says sand in glass tube, cork, sealing wax, and map. So he sealed this tube of sand with sealing wax so it doesn't fall out and make a mess. But I think that he does this quite often as a souvenir of the place. Sometimes it is sand, and sometimes it's mud, and sometimes it's one color of sand, and sometimes it's 4 different colors of sand. But I asked him when he was here, when this exhibit opened, why some of the vials are really long and some of the vials are short. And he said, well, for the smaller paintings, it tends to be a shorter vial. And for the bigger paintings, I needed the longer vial because I'm trying to make it look like there's an underscore, like you're underlining the painting. That was his reason for that. But this one, you can see that, let me see what he says. Oh yeah, this one was, before he told me that about the underscore, I was guessing that the reason why some of the vials were bigger was because it was really sandy and really dusty and blowing, because some of the places, were really, that became a real challenge to being in some of these places. Like he says in his diary entry here, he says, May 8th, 1990, heavily laden, hot, dusty trail. We had to take shelter from a sandstorm. All orifices were full of sand. So this was like a big part of his memory was how much sand there was, and it was in the ear and in your nose and in your eyes. But let's keep going down, because the next one I think is mud, and we're going to look at that one. So this one is Totem at 3 Canyons. So Totem is this vertical rock formation here. But check out the souvenirs in this one. The vial is full of dark mud, right? And he's done a little painting of, can you see what that is? Cougar tracks. That was a memory from that place, was they found some cougar tracks. And another little map is another part of the souvenir. But let me tell you what he says here. He says, by now they're in canoes. He says there were 4 canoes because he was with friends and with the videographer. 4 heavy laden canoes. We arrived at 3 Canyon via a muddy side stream. It was slippery unloading. And if you watch the video, you can see them sinking in that mud, like all the way, part way up their leg, almost to their knees, wading through the mud. And he says it was slippery unloading. We pitched the tents in the tamarisk, which is a type of a tree. We saw cougar tracks, and then I was up at dawn to paint. And then we had to load the boats in deep mud. You will see that in the video. That's a memorable section of the video. You'll notice quite a few of the paintings down at this end have little painting as the souvenir. So he couldn't bring the cougar tracks with him. And he opted, instead of including like, a little photograph or snapshot, I don't think he relied on the camera much at all. Unlike other artists, you don't see him with a camera. He had a videographer documenting the trip, but he didn't like to document with a camera. It's all with his paper and pencil and paint, and his diary entries, which I guess is paper and pencil as well. But he talks about seeing cougar tracks. This one doesn't, it did mention cougar tracks, but it doesn't say much about it. But notice he's done it on a heavy piece of watercolor paper. You can see 3 cougar tracks to trigger his memory that this was an important part of where they were camping. And then if you look underneath that, you see an X with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 dots after it, and you'll see this again on some of the other pieces. The X is representing how many nights were spent in that area, so just one night. Sometimes it was 6 nights, sometimes it was no nights, they just stopped for maybe a few hours while he did a really small painting. So the dots are the number of times they stopped, pulled over and explored, maybe to check out the scenery, to see if they wanted to stay. So they stopped a lot, like what did I say, 7 or 8 times along the river that day, but they only camped in this location one night. That was their day. Lots of stops and one night in that location. If we go right next door, you'll see there was a rainstorm, right? A big thunder and lightning storm. And there was some bird or prey, he probably tell us what it was here. Not sure what it is here, but that was an important part of his memory too. And you can see one night, many, many stops along the river, right? And look at this. Do you see this white thing here? Anybody know what that is? So he would clip his paper to his drawing board.
Yeah.
It's one of those toggle clips. What are they called?
Binder clips?
Toggle clip. Yeah, the big metal ones. And he's clipped his paper to the drawing board. Okay, we're gonna go to a big one
Was he
next.
happy with the way you got it arranged
Yes,
here?
yes. So there's yeah, he really did like it. And these are all owned by the Tony Foster Museum, which is in Palo Alto. As you can imagine, if you create a bunch of paintings that are all part of one journey, you don't really want to sell one and then have the journey be broken up. So he has a patron, someone who really likes his work, who lives in Palo Alto, and they started a Tony Foster Museum in California. And that museum purchased all of these, so they will never be broken up and sold off bit by bit, which is really nice that somebody has committed to that. I love this one. Look at the glass tube of sand at the bottom. You see 1, 2, 3, 4 different colors of sand, and then look into the landscape and you can find those 4 different colors of sandstone in the landscape. So he's remembering all the different colors. He's remembering, ooh, look at that, an arrowhead. So I don't know, I didn't ask him, and I don't know if he found any of these arrowheads or if he purchased them, but I imagine he saw some and he wanted to include them. I mean, he might have been in a place where you couldn't collect things other than sand, maybe. But he did put an arrowhead into that one. He talks about when in his diary entries for this one, he talks about 90-degree heat. He talks about 88 degrees in the shade. He talks about needing an extra tea break during the day. And he talks about how the average tourist comes up to this spot and spends 10 minutes looking at the view. He said, I average 6 days in spots like this. Okay, let's keep going. There's a great little book for this exhibit that is available in the museum shop. But I want to stop and pause for a little bit at this glass case and look at his materials. So you can see he's got it figured out. He's very efficient with what he decides to pack and bring with him. You know, those of you who do boat trips and hiking trips, you know, on a boat trip, you typically can take a lot more weight if you're rafting. But remember, he's hiking 400 feet up the cliff sometimes to get to the vantage point. So he has really pared it down. He brings this little metal case here is his paint box. These little squares are his dry paint pans where you just add water and mix it to get your watercolor. This plastic lid is his palette for mixing the colors. The tube holds his pencils and brushes. He doesn't show the big tube here, but if you look in the picture there, or if you watch the video, you might see the big tube that holds the big pieces of paper rolled up. you can see in this photo here and also in the video, his big drawing board. That, remember, folds into 3 sections that he can bring with him. And then you see the binder clips there. That was the word I was thinking of, toggle clip, binder clip. That's what he uses to clip the paper to the drawing board, and he clips it along the top. Sometimes he clips it along the side and also along the bottom. And then he props it up using rocks to support it. He has to think about the direction of the wind. And so in some of the video and still photos, you see like a piece of parachute cord or string or little rope coming off and tying to a boulder so it can't blow this way or that way. Because, you know, a big board like that with a gust of wind could tip over pretty easily. And, you know, tiny little sponges for sponging in the clouds. You know, typically when you're watercolor painting, you're putting in the swath of blue in the sky, and then you come in with a dry sponge and pick up some of that wet paint to create clouds.
How did he discover the green? Did he just travel around and find it?
That's a really good question. He had been there before, I think traveling around on some other project, and somebody had recommended it to him. And then he knew someday he wanted to go back and do this journey.
And he did.
And he did, right, right. So interesting, Bobby, what you just made me think of something else I want to mention. Some of his journeys, he says, are geographical, meaning one location, like the Green River.
Yeah.
And he says some of his journeys are more philosophical. For example, he's working on one, I think either he's just finished it or maybe he's still working on it, called The Most Beautiful Places in the World. And he went to people, famous people who spend a lot of time in the outdoors, and he said, what do you think is the most beautiful place in the world? And he got all kinds of different ideas. And then he went to these places. Some of them he was familiar with, some of them not familiar with, and went to these places and then painted these places. So it's all over the globe. Even somebody gave him a underwater coral reef location, and he said he came up with a way to do a drawing underwater. And he uses like a plastic, some kind of plastic sheet for paper, and uses wax crayons for drawing. I know there's an interesting photo. It's probably not in that book because that book's for this journey, but it's in somewhere I saw it, and he's under the water with like scuba gear drawing under the water. So he's very determined. Like, you know, I want to end with a quote from Tony Foster about why he does what he does. He says, "My friends sometimes question why, at over age 77, I continue to set out from my home in Tywardreath, which is in Cornwall, to erect my drawing board in yet another uncomfortable and unpredictable location. I am not sure it's a question I can answer, except to pay attention to the natural world is what I believe I'm supposed to be doing. If, by showing my paintings, I can bring the extraordinary beauty, interconnectedness, and fragility of the planet to the attention of the public, then my efforts will not have been in vain."
Does he paint in England also?
He does, but if you look at the different journeys and where they have been, most of them are in North America, most. Yeah, and the video I'll just mention, if you haven't already watched it, do take the time to watch the video. The closed captions tell you what they're saying. There's also audio, but it's really quiet and I'm making a lot of noise. You probably can't hear the audio right now, but you can, it's great because you can see how he works with the painstaking pencil work first, and then adding the painting inch by inch. And they talk about the locations on the map, and they talk about the mud and the dust and the canoes and the whitewater rafts. And it adds a lot, I think, the video. Any questions?
Thank you, Jane.
Yeah, it's up through, did I say?
It's up to, it's May something.
It's up through May 4th, 2025.
May 4th.
Mhm. So
All
lots of
right.
opportunity if you get tours or you have friends visiting to bring them on the journey.
You talk about his works on the most beautiful places. Is that complete?
I don't think
Is
so.
there a book?
I think there will be at some point.
So you guys ready to start heading it back into the lounge? We're gonna start our meeting section.
Okay.
Yeah, the mud shot, always. I just gotta skedaddle in so I can get this computer back. It's dying slowly.
You know, Lauren, my son just left yesterday. He's a rock climber.
Hi again.
I'm so sorry I did not drive him over to see this. This just makes me want to go to the Green River.
Green River Lakes has a real nice place to stay, and it books out, it's kind of interesting. Because I have friends that go down there to hike, and then if you've ever been to Flaming Gorge,
Oh, driven through that. Yeah.
it's a fun place to hike and visit.
Sage,
Yes.
Joan, is the last hour, starting at noon, is that the lunch?
Yeah, the last hour is a lunch. For the next hour, we're going to be having our meeting.
Yes, I understand. Okay, so I will have to leave at 12 o'clock.
That's okay. We're gonna be done by then.
Thanks.
No problem. Got my working out for the day. Carrying on. I'll be right back, everybody.
Yeah, kind of like Monica, you know, how is that? I don't know.
Been given a lot of tours.
I have.
She said it was gonna be slow, so it had to be pretty fast.
Well, probably, you know, you get different people each time too. So how it is.
Yeah, they're different.
Notice we're getting a lot of those.
Yes, it's part of the culture.
No.
I know when we go out, you know, we. They do it.
They have dinner here.
Really?
After the tour. They do a tour, some of them don't want the tour, they start drinking. Cocktail hour. So,
I thought ahead and I brought my Bluetooth mouse so I don't have to be on the computer.
Priority. Probably because they.
No, actually, different one than the mushroom. Because the mushroom.
Hi, everyone. Thank you guys so much for paying attention during the training. I think both Kennis and Jane did a great job of covering things in broad strokes, but and also detail. I don't know about y'all, but I learned a lot, especially about the Green River one. I didn't know it went downriver, so that was fun for me. So for the quarterly volunteer meeting, we have a little bit to cover of updates and policy things. So if you guys have questions, please wait towards the end of when I'm finished, and we're trying to cover them all then. Sound good? All right. Is she gonna do it? There we go. As you guys know, this is our mission, our vision, and our values. Just a reminder, I'm required to put this in the PowerPoint because it's gonna go on the internet. As you guys know, our volunteer of the year this year was Lynn Whalen. She's unfortunately sick here today. We are going to present her plaque to her formally. Because she's sick, we might save that for the next meeting or next time she comes in. So just be aware. Also, the volunteer of the year plaque also required a new plaque this year. It was made in the same style as the last one. So just be aware that you're gonna see some more plaques go up. In addition, we have 2 No Wyoming Sage Society inductees. Lynn also got into Sage Society this year. And Joyce Fryer also qualified this year, so neither of them are here, but yay! These two new additions also require the Sage Society plaque to be updated. This was a little more complicated because it was a custom piece. So I wanted to update you to know that we are currently in the process of updating this plaque. It's not going to be up for a few weeks. But basically what we're doing is, you know how there's a smaller wooden bar across the bottom to add more? We're going to be adding another one below. It's a custom piece being done by one of the staff members' husbands. So that will be done soon, hopefully before the next quarterly volunteer meeting, so we can do a nice picture with everybody. This is probably the biggest and most important thing, the winter volunteer opportunities. This is kind of covering some things that are new, some things that are old. Of course, Lori Bay is in charge of library cleanup. She lets me know the shifts at the beginning of the month. I try to get those out as soon as possible. So just check VicNet with the calendar, or I will always try and highlight them in my weekly announcements. If there are no shifts available, but you know there is a shift, go ahead and come. Logistics only lets me add a certain number of volunteers to a shift. So it gets complicated for the library when so many people sign up. So just keep that in mind, because I've had people ask. We also have Fables, Feathers, and Fur. As you all hopefully saw in your email, there is a new policy update we've had a lot of popularity with this program of volunteers helping out with it. So to make sure that everybody got an equal chance to help with it, volunteers are only allowed to help with this once a month. So for now, that's 1 out of the 2 sessions for a month in winter, and then in the summer, when we do the 4, it'll still just be that 1 number. So keep that in mind as you guys look at the calendar. There should be some dates opening up in the summer as well. Our next first Sundays are, of course, February 2nd and March 2nd. The months this year are kind of crazy. All the days kind of align in the same way. February 2nd's shifts are already on logistics. So if you are interested in helping out with First Sunday, everything's already posted and ready to go. March, I need to check in with Stephanie to make sure that that will be the same before I post it, but it should be. I just always like to check with her to sometimes, like with the Christmas one, or not Christmas, the holiday one, in December, she needs different posts, so I always have to double check with that. Docent tours, Madison's in charge of marketing. Anna Kay's in charge of our group tours. As you know, she's been working very hard to increase the number of docent tours. So you may have noticed I talk a lot about docent tours in my emails. That's because we have a lot more docent tours this year than in past years. So you guys can help out whenever you can. It's much appreciated. I would say this month we have about 70 to 80% of them covered. So we're really doing a good job. It's only those few I'm highlighting in the emails that aren't getting covered. So I really appreciate our docents and how hard they're working with the tours. All the tours are updated throughout the year that I currently have. Some may be added a little bit more last minute, but I will always let you guys know as those go up. Give it back. Hold on. I can't do it while I'm standing up. There we go. Okay, Monday musings. This is, of course, a docent-led program, which I did update to try and streamline the process a little bit. There's both an Excel sheet sign up, but also a logistics sign up. So for every other Monday up until April, when it'll change, there is open positions to be a Monday musings lead. So if you are a docent and you wish to lead Monday musings and want to have a bit more of a scheduled time, feel free to sign up for any of those shifts. Like Lucretia is doing it on next Monday, so I went ahead and signed you up for that logistics sign up so people know that that is covered. Any questions about that one? I know it's a little bit new, but everything is on VicNet, and if you have any questions or issues, just let me know. Blacktail Bash is February 22nd. It may seem like a long way away, but we are already getting volunteer shifts for this. There is a lot of options. If you have any questions about what the shifts mean, let me know. There is also possibly going to be some trainings, but Stephanie will let me know as those come up. So if you're interested in helping out with Blacktail Bash, I will be there. I will be the volunteer coordinator there. So for all the volunteers, I'll be kind of your floater, helper. If anything goes wrong, you let me know. I'll be there to help you all out. We also have a new opportunity, which is really I'm going to give in the next weekly announcement, but you guys get to hear it first. Steve has asked us for a very big project. And he did this in mind with volunteers who may be away from the museum currently, seasonally. But you are also welcome to, if maybe perhaps you don't want to come into the museum as much during this winter time. It is going to be compiling board and trustee information. The way it'll work is I'm going to be given an email and password for a volunteer email login on Google Drive. You will be going through documents on the Google Drive and compiling them into an Excel sheet. There's a training on the 22nd. It's a little last minute, but there'll be several trainings to kind of catch people. This is simply the first. It'll be with Ara, Steve's assistant. So she will go over how to log in, what you will be looking for, what the Excel sheet looks like, what she's asking you to do. So this is kind of just a way to, I know I had several volunteers asking, what can I do when I'm away from the museum? This will be a great opportunity for volunteers like that. Any questions about volunteer opportunities? I know it was a lot. Okay, these are two things that are probably the biggest update from this volunteer meeting, so I only have one. So we're gonna pass this around. One of Danny's last things he did before he left was update a volunteer welcome packet. Basically, it updated the graphics, some more information, kind of made things nice. I was told that many volunteers hadn't gotten to look at it yet. So what we're gonna do is I'm gonna pass this around in person. I'm gonna share it online in the weekly meeting for those who are online. And basically, so you can see kind of what the new updates visually and textually are for the volunteer program. I give these to prospective volunteers, and it helps them know what's going on and also includes some of the paperwork. We're going to be doing the same thing to the docent manual because I don't know if you guys know, but the docent manual has not been updated formally since May 2015. That's the only copy I can find. I have already worked with some volunteers, Lucretia and Kimberly specifically, to get some feedback on them on what you might need to change and be updated, since there's a lot of outdated information and policies there. I've handed those suggestions and changes to Anna Kay, who is going to visually update it now. So it'll be a couple weeks until we get that docent manual because there's a lot of marketing visuals she has to create in the next few weeks. But as soon as I get that, I'll be sharing that with everybody. The biggest change probably though will be I'm splitting up the training to try and encourage new docents. I had a lot of people come up to me and say, oh, the docent training is just too much. So what we're doing is we're doing an introduction training, which will give people the basic information they need to do tours. So like, what's in the gallery, what's the history of the museum, things like that. And that will make them a docent, but then the rest of a year, like 6 to 12 months, they'll spend expanding their knowledge with the rest of the training materials. So that's probably the biggest update. So these are kind of the major changes and things like that. Any questions about those changes? Awesome.
When do you expect it to be done?
We hope to be by the end of January as the soonest it will be done. And then maybe more optimistically mid-February. Mainly because Anna Kay is working right now to help with all the Blacktail Bash preparations. Everyone's kind of getting all hands on deck for that party. So it's kind of, you know, she works on it when she can, but until then, not too much. I may have gone too fast, just a little, you know. I'm just told I was concise, that's what people tell me. There are a couple other things I would like your opinions and updates on that weren't formally put on the agenda because it happened the last day or so. For the summer volunteer appreciation party, I talked to the VLC and we have booked the old Wilson Schoolhouse. This will give us more space to invite more people, including more band members, plus ones, and they gave us a great rate, may I say. So the next thing that we'll have to choose is catering. I've contacted a couple options provided by the VLC. The main two we are considering based on our budget is Sidewinders and Calico Restaurant. Both will be pretty pasta featured, but also with vegetables for people who are vegetarian or vegan. So if you guys had a preference, which would you choose, Sidewinders or Calicos? Sidewinders, Calico. We got one on each. And it's okay if you guys don't have a preference, I might like look closer and just make that decision myself.
I prefer Calico.
Calico, that's what.
Oh, now we gotta
I will say Calico has a bit more of a diverse menu for us to choose for. That's the only reason I prefer it over Sidewinders, because Sidewinders it would be chicken pot pie or a Asian chicken pasta, but Calico's it'd be several pasta dishes, several sides, salads, desserts, a good deal on spicy margaritas. I'm told that's important.
I've eaten at Calico's for probably 20 years, never had a bad meal there.
Never had a bad meal there, so it might be
That's better, actually.
preference towards Calico's. This is just good for me to know, because I have to reach out and confirm some catering details with them. But just so you guys know and are kept in the loop of all those decisions I'm making. I'm also working with Stephanie of possible like activities to be done. We've decided we'll have lawn games because we have a big lawn, because we have the whole facility to use. But if you guys think of any other things that you think, oh, this might be fun to do at the summer appreciation party, please let me know. I'm open to any ideas. We might just have to talk them through.
So there's a ring across the street, we could do horseback riding.
That'd be interesting. I'm not the
Should do ice
best.
skating
I
now.
get sore too easily. My hips are
Do you
in the
know
best
that-
shape.
Do you know the hours approximately?
The approximate hours are going to be 5 to 7 after the board meeting that day, so it'll kind of be an evening activity. I sent out the yearly volunteer calendar. Some of those days are subject to change based on changes, but there are mostly concrete dates on there. And so it'll be August 15th for the appreciation parade. Any other questions about that? The last major update that also wasn't on there, because again, it happened kind of last minute and I was off-site filming yesterday, so I did not get to update the agenda with this, is I know we had previously discussed in the VLC, the Hearts and Flowers Fund. Because of finance changing and who's in charge and things like that, they have asked that we change our policy on that. So the way it is currently working is docent tips as a whole are being funneled back into the volunteer budget, which means that you guys, if you feel like there is a need to do something with the Hearts and Flowers Fund, contact me and we bring it out of the museum budget. This means that the docent tips are like attached to the fiscal year. So it's from April to May of the next year. And any money or tips that are raised for that year is the money you have for the Hearts and Flowers Fund. It doesn't carry over into the next year because of how the volunteer budget works. But because the volunteer budget is kind of flexible, even if you don't use all the docent tips, you may use it for something like a volunteer trip or a really great speaker or things like that for training. So even if you don't use a Hearts and Flowers Fund, those money is available to be used for other things. Does that make sense? Yeah, that's kind of the big update. Basically, they told me I'm not allowed to handle things financially when it comes to docent tips and cash. I'm not allowed to touch those things. They said I can't do it. So everything has been a little bit more formalized. So the Hearts and Flowers Fund is available. It's based on tips from docent tours. So if you ever want to use it, you send a request to me and then the museum will handle it. Does that sound okay with everybody? And I will formalize this, of course, put it in an email, make an announcement, but we just had a meeting the other day, so it's a little crazy. All right, well, we are really waiting for staff. Ooh, I thought this would take a little longer. Actually, I know why it's not taking a little longer. One of my slides is missing. The evaluation project. Many of you have probably heard about this, but if you have not, I will formalize it all right now. Basically, education has decided to evaluate the 3D photo works that are in our gallery. So it's that touchable interactive with Chief, where you can touch Chief, it'll speak to you and tell you more about Chief. We're going to be evaluating that in addition to the George O'Keeffe Antelope piece that we will be getting in April. And the volunteers are going to be our main workforce for that. So I'm sure you maybe noticed that on the volunteer calendar, there's 2 trainings, general evaluation training, which is February 10th, and then a focus group training, which is on February 22nd. Those are the beginning trainings for that project. We'll be holding another set of trainings for the seasonal volunteers later in April and May. But because of how the Beast works, they will only be able to train for one part of the project, not the other, because the project is in twofold. It is going to be a survey, a general survey that we will do in the galleries. So you will be proctoring a survey next to Chief, asking people questions. I will, of course, train you on how to handle that. Someone else will also be in the gallery at the other piece. So say one person's at Chief during surveys, someone will be at Antelope collecting data. Like I said, you're going to be trained on all of this, so do not worry, I'm going to teach you well. And then we will also be doing a focus group. The focus group will take place at the end of April, so it will not be as available to seasonal volunteers, but you will need additional training. It'll be a longer training session, so you'll be trained to take notes, help facilitate in a way of this is how you hang out in the background of a focus group and basically helping the process along. Does all of that make sense? I will send out a formal, I keep saying this, but I will. I just wanted to tell you all first. We're gonna upload this meeting so people will also hear it there. Detailing all this, but this is gonna be a very big project. All volunteers are invited to help. We're gonna need as many hands on deck to get as much good data as possible. And this is important because it's going to help us continue either funding the Photo Works project or deciding where that money goes in a different way. So it's a really big responsibility for me, for you all. So I'm very excited to have this first kind of big volunteer project I'm working with you all. Any questions about that project or any details you feel like you need more information on? Awesome. And like I said, the volunteer calendar that I sent out at the beginning of the year. Sorry, I'm paranoid that's gonna turn off again. Like I said, beginning of the year, sent out those calendars. The training dates are on those, but I will also remind you, there will not be a VicNet sign up because I assume there's gonna be too many people and I don't want the random shift to just disappear. But I will be including it in the monthly calendar, the weekly announcements, as many reminders as possible. And it's going to be during the regular Monday meetings times because I figured it'd be easiest to keep things as consistent with what we already do as possible. Sounds good.
Okay.
All right. I didn't have a slide for the evaluation. I realized I forgot to move it. That's why no pressure. You're not supposed to be here. But if you're okay to kind of,
Sure.
maybe we might have to wait on Stephanie a little longer, but
Does it take a few minutes then?
yeah, let me take a few minutes just to relax.
No, do you get the update now or?
Oh,
wait?
sure. Yeah, no, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
So if you guys didn't know, Steve is on a unfortunate work trip. He could not be here. It's part of the reason we did the volunteer calendar was to make sure that Steve could be at all future volunteer events this year. And so board members could also have those important dates like the appreciation party on their calendar. So Mike has so graciously agreed to speak on museum updates in Steve's place.
All right. Here's what we have on, is it Joan? Joan, how are you?
She's muted. I think she's trying to unmute, but she sounded good earlier.
I'm doing fine. I don't know who asked, but I'm doing fine. How are you?
Good to see you on Zoom.
Thank you. Good to see all of you. Wish I was there. Oh, no, I don't. It's too cold.
You've been intimidating. You told me it was gonna be a nice.
It's super
I
casual.
already know there's one or two hecklers already, I think. I have 3 or 4 things that I was gonna give a quick update on, and they always say, save the best for last, but I'm gonna save the best for first. And some of you may have heard this already, but I'm assuming you haven't, because I asked Jane if I could share this. This is an email from Steve to all the staff, and this went out yesterday. And it says, "Hi, everyone. I'm thrilled to share the news that our very own Jane Lavino has been awarded the Governor's Arts Award." So when you see Jane, tell her congratulations. And there's a couple paragraphs here I'm going to read. It just explains what the Governor's Arts Award is. So bear with me for just a minute. It says, established in 1982, the Governor's Arts Award recognizes excellence in the arts and outstanding service to the arts in Wyoming. Over the years, And I'm just gonna share with you. What this explains about it. It says,
Over the years.
yeah, I'm looking for my over the years. Over the years, individuals and organizations have more, from more than 35 Wyoming communities and statewide organizations have been honored for their dedication to the arts in Wyoming, including the National Museum of Wildlife Art, Bill and Jaffa Kurt, and Duncan Harris. These honorees exemplify the rich cultural, heritage, and artistic spirit of Wyoming, and their work continues to inspire communities across the state. So, yeah, join me in congratulating Jane.
Any of you feel like taking a trip to Cheyenne, February 28th? You can get tickets online, and so they always award it to 3 people. It's not just visual arts, it's dance, it's music. And I don't know who the other 2 are this year, I haven't heard.
It's listed on here,
Is it
actually.
listed? My
But
guess
go
is
ahead.
they're from other parts of
They are.
Wyoming.
But this one's actually probably the most prestigious.
Yeah.
Steve goes on to share that Jane's impact as an art educator in Wyoming has been tremendous. She boasts the longest tenure of any employee at the museum, having worked here for 34 years. In 1991 is when Jane began. She's worked in education for decades, teaching everything from photography to paper making to wilderness skills. She even spent 7 summers working for the National Outdoors Leadership School, leading trips into the Absaroka Wind River Mountains, instilling wilderness, climbing, and map reading skills to her students. In her role as a Curator of Education here, Jane has championed the arts in Wyoming at every level. She works with local and regional artists, giving them both a platform and venue for their work and the opportunity to educate the next generation of Wyoming artists. Jane and her team also frequently host school groups. You guys know a lot of this. Throughout Wyoming, students regularly visiting from Star Valley, Kemmerer, Eden, Buffalo, Laramie, Sheridan, and Casper. During her tenure at the museum, Jane has made an impact on thousands of students and visitors and volunteers.
Yeah.
Yay.
Good job.
So that was just, I thought, some enjoyable fun news to share about Jane. And then in February, we'll have the Schedule of Arts Award. Let's see. By way of update, I'm just looking back at last year and then this coming year. We've recently, as department heads and as groups in the museum, completed our budgets. And we're going through the process of meeting with different committees and then the board in February to review and approve our budgets. Last year, we ended looking, did you end in the black or did you end in the red? We just barely ended in the black. So it was a very nice, accurate budget that we did last year. The budget's pretty lean. And when I go back and I'm looking at all the things we did this last year, we had all 3 elevators modernized. That was a very expensive project. Hundreds of thousands of dollars to do elevators. We did a new art storage closet in the Wapiti. That was a fun project. It took a couple months, but we have new racks, we have new storage bins.
A couple months. Wait a minute, it's longer than that.
I guess the moving of the artwork, all of that, yes, it was a big project. Let's see. I'm thinking about Jesse just walked in, and Gabrielle, the rental events, our shop admissions, all these things that we've done have been an increase from the years past. And but it's not just the efforts from them. I think of the efforts from you all, from the volunteers, and all the programs and events we do. We really can't do it without you. And I just want to say thank you for all the effort that you put in to help us be successful. So thank you.
Thanks. I'm sure I saw sneak peeks and keep up a mouse properly. We have programs and events speaking next. It's a very interesting event. Yeah, it's just something to know, so sweet. Okay, hi guys.
you all doing? I'm Stephanie. I have taken over, I think it's been a while since I've spoken to everyone at once. So I've taken over Michelle's role in programs and events. I've also taken on other events, so like development events as well, member events, society events. I assist education if they need help with food and beverage.
Huge help with the volunteer party.
But Western Visions is no longer under me. I assist with Western Visions, but that's under Madison. So just to clarify all of that. But we have Gabrielle here, so I don't know if everyone's met her. If you didn't already know, she took over my previous role as events coordinator. And do you want to just say a little something about yourself?
Yes, so how Justin kind of migrated into Kim's old position, I filled that space. So I'm the center of the Venn diagram between Stephanie and Jesse, is how I explain it pretty well. So you'll see me at First Sundays and you'll also see me at the film festival. I'm thinking of moving into the members lounge. Don't tell anybody, just to save on some rent. I'm a native New Yorker. I'm from Asquith, Queens. That's why Lori Day and I get along very well. Yes, nice, perfect. And I have extra chairs and floor pillows if you ever want to gossip in my office.
So I just wanted to do a quick overview of some programs and events that we've got going on coming up before pretty much summer starts. So February for Sunday is the first thing that's coming up. That'll be February 2nd. We are partnering with the Teton Conservation District, and they'll be focusing on their stewardship handbook, which is kind of cool, that has information about how to be a good steward of the Teton area, including like the craft will be centered somewhere around like dark skies and animal tracks. Thank you, Lori Day, for that inspiration. And we will also have music by Hillary Camino. If you don't know Hillary, she's an amazing musician. Her husband is the director of Center for the Arts, Marty Camino, and she is the music instructor at Sage Living. So she's been a great partner with the museum, inspired by Michelle. And also we have our 9th annual Blacktail Bash. Sage posted requests for positions, volunteer positions at Blacktail Bash already on logistics, so please sign up. It is a Wild West formal theme. We will still have the aspects of wearing masks, but we also kind of put a Western twist on it. So one of our sponsors is JW Bennett. They do the custom hats in town. And there's a grand prize for the poker derby, which is also new this year. And so the grand prize is you win a JW Bennett custom hat, which is really fun. So the staff will be wearing JW Bennett hats to promote that grand prize. So the poker derby the inspiration is to get people to vote on the artworks, the 5 artworks that will be out at Blacktail Bash for guests to vote on. And then so that incentive to try and get the best poker hand over the evening is part of that inspiration. If you want to know more information about that and you're working it, I would be happy to talk about that a little bit more, but it gets a little bit too convoluted and I don't have enough time. So March First Sunday is the next and the last first Sunday of the season. That is on March 2nd. We will have the Wind River Community Alliance as our partner. So I actually just spoke to the Rockwell, which used to be the Lexington, to get them discounted rooms for the Wind River artists to come out here. And it'll kind of be, it's a little bit different programming as in the past. We won't necessarily have a musical component, but we'll have multiple artists from the Wind River Reservation demonstrating their artwork. So to engage with with the visitors to talk about their craft specifically. We don't know exactly what kind of artists will be there, but I'm hoping that we'll have some beadwork. I'm hoping to have some quilting artists. And the ribbon skirts, that's and possible other artists we might have. So TBD on exactly who's coming out, but it'll be fun. We'll have about 4 artists from the Wind River Reservation demonstrate. And then, of course, Plein Air Fest is in June, so keep that in the back of your mind. Another favorite event of the summer, kind of launching off the summer. That'll be on the 14th, always the Saturday before Father's Day. Not much different, but still hoping for a great turnout and good weather, fingers crossed. So more to come on that, but same format as before. And then, of course, Yoga on the Trail. Anyone who wants to participate in Yoga on the Trail, July and August, it's every Thursday during those 2 months. Something I didn't put in here because dates have kind of been a little wavering, but we will also need help with our community exhibition opening, which we just solidified yesterday, will be May 30th. So just keep that in mind. That one will be a big to do. The elephants exhibit that's coming up, I'm sure Jane will talk about, is we're what? No. I was like, wait, what? That's awkward. But for our community exhibition opening, we will need help for that, as we do for all of our community exhibition opening events. And thank you. So these are pictures from last year. We have Plein Air Fest when I had to come inside for the silent auction portion, Blacktail Bash, and then our first Sunday artist from last year from March. But yeah, thank you all for your help. Questions about shifts and stuff. Thank you. So we provided this lovely PowerPoint. Mine was not as good as comparison. I'm going to take this time to introduce Karen. So you want to go ahead and introduce yourself? Museum.
Sure, I'm Karen. I've been here pushing 6 months. I work mostly in the museum shop, sometimes at the front desk. Hopefully start from just training and that is ramped up. But yeah, I just love being here. And what's what?
About yourself?
Oh, about myself. Okay, I've been here almost 6 years. I moved to Jackson trying to get a little closer to my son. I'm originally from California. He moved to Wyoming or Colorado, and I got here and just never. I left for a short time came back, but yeah, what else can I tell you? I'm very nice. It's so funny, the last job I ever had, you know, so I'll be here a while and finally they kick me out.
And I just want to highlight Karen is always a very friendly face in the shop. She lets me come and chat with her for time. So if you're ever just hanging around and you see Karen in the shop, feel free to very nice conversation with us.
I'm always up to chat.
And then Kim, if you're ready, do you want to start with staff introductions?
I will. That
Okay.
sounds great. You guys don't have to stand up if you don't want.
Just
Jane
say
do. Right. I'll stand up with you. I'll stand up.
Yeah, come to the front. Stand in front of this lovely power.
Oh, you want us to stand? Okay. Bring it front.
It's also partly.
And I will let them speak for themselves too, but Lindsay here is our registrar, our new registrar. They both started on December 2nd. And Lindsay comes from Seattle, Washington. And there could be other Seattles, I'm so aware of them. And Becca, our preparator, comes from Alaska originally, and she's living in Wilson now, and Lindsay's living in Victor. So we're all over the place. And I'll let you both tell everybody a little bit about yourselves, like where you what your specialty is.
I got here the week before Thanksgiving, so I've been here long.
And I went to the University of Washington for my master's in library information science. For that, I was in my undergrad at Central in Ellensburg, and I lived in Washington my whole life until the week before Thanksgiving. So.
And she has a dog named Chucky.
I do have a dog named
What's her breed?
I don't know. She's rescued from Texas. She's one tribe. She's black with little white socks and brown eyebrows.
Sounds like a bit of an Aussie.
Yeah.
This is my 4th winter here. But I've gone back to Alaska in the summers and I run a commercial fishing boat there. But here full time now, which is fun. I went to McAllister College in St. Paul, Minnesota. That's a studio art major, so getting back to the arts. I have a dog named Bart. She's a border collie, an Idaho shag. And she has a lot of energy.
Yeah.
Yep. And I live on a ranch, so she's getting used to cows and horses.
Yeah, so we're thrilled that they're here. And we have a full staff and curator on that.
Yay. Where did you do your internship?
Yeah.
Oh, I did intern in college in the entomology department at the Smithsonian Natural History Museum in DC. And it was very, very cool working with their insect collection. I worked specifically with the Heteroptera and the imaging.
What do humans call?
That there's a lot of bugs within that. Stink bugs are one of the most well known. They're like leaf bugs. Or like some
Good for a preparator to know about bugs too.
But
Yeah.
yes, honestly, I'm getting
Yeah.
back to my entomology.
Yeah.
So not too much longer.
Fingers crossed, yeah. You can hit it. There's just a couple slides. Yeah. Summer exhibitions, yay. I know all of you are thinking about it. You might have heard some things about our summer exhibitions coming up. You can put it again. So, like last summer, in the King Gallery, in the Bison and the Changing Visions Gallery, we're having a photography show. And you know, we've had a lot of Nat Geo photography shows, and visitors really love those because they call me and ask me, when is your photography show going to be? When is your next photography show? And this one is from the Natural History Museum in London. And it is the Wildlife Photographer of the Year competition that had almost 60,000 entries this year.
Wow.
This is the 60th edition. You can go to that website. You can go to the Natural History website, and they have a lot about it. And they have a little gallery, so you can look at the entries from this year that we will be having here. So we have the updated, most current version. And you see there's this little ermine. We were visited by one. Probably a lot of you heard about it. Maybe some of you were here when she was here. They were here. And this one is in fact taken in Yellowstone. There's also, if you go to the website, there's a separate section that they took 25 pieces they drew out that are not in the exhibit, but are people's choice. So you can vote on those, and one of the photographers that did a beaver is Savannah Rose, and she is from Jackson, Wyoming. So photographers from all over the world with some of the greatest wildlife pictures in around today. I mean, can you imagine 60,000 entries? I would have a tough time on that journey. Okay, you can go to the next one. So this is a little bit harder to explain because this is put on by the Great Elephant Migration is the name of the organization that's putting on this elephant migration. What is so cool about this? This came to me actually not that long ago, and they said, "Oh, we would like to use your space to bring this here." So they are bringing them here. This is not a rental or anything. They are traveling these elephants around the country. Let me tell you a little bit about the elephants. So this organization put together the idea to have these elephant sculptures made. They're made out of lantana that grows in India. The artists that put these elephants together are native to India, and they worked as sort of a collective to put the elephants together. So they're made of these reeds, these lantana reeds. And yes, they are legal to bring them here to the United States and have here they've been treated. So we checked all of that out. So in this herd, they are full-size, female, male elephants. You can see some of them have tusks, some of them are adolescents, some of them are babies. There are 100 in the initial herd. The herd that we're gonna give here is part of a herd. They're splitting the other half of what's left of the herd. They've sold off some of these elephants and they've stayed in their places. And I can tell you where they've been in just a second. But the other half of the herd is gonna open up in on the Blackfeet Reservation in Montana near Glacier National Park. So we're gonna get 30 and they're gonna go, they need a certain kind of soil to put them in. But people coming Jackson Way towards Grand Teton and Yellowstone are gonna see these elephants. They're only gonna be here for about 5 weeks. They're coming in May and they leave on June 21st. Where they have been, Newport, Rhode Island was the first stop. So they're migrating across the United States. One of the sponsors, I will tell you, to the Great Elephant Migration is the singer, actress extraordinaire Cher, is one of the supporters of this group. But they also are from Newport, Rhode Island. They went to the Meatpacking District in New York City. I saw they put flowers all over the elephants. They encourage you to touch these elephants too. Hopefully not ride on them though. We're gonna kind of discourage that. But yeah, so different life-size animals, and there they are at Miami Beach was where they went to for the Venice, or not the Venice Biennale, the Art Basel. Yeah, Miami. Venice would be cool though. And then they are going to go to Houston in April. I don't have the dates on that, but you have to look at their website. It's kind of been a organic way to bring these different things here. But we were talking to them yesterday, and the group that's putting it together, there's only about 8 people that run the whole migration over here. They think we can safely say that we're gonna have a soft opening on June 17th. They're gonna start to install, or I'm sorry, May 17th. They're gonna start to install them on May 12th. That's the plan. And they're gonna be here, as I said, through the 20th of June. They're leaving on the 21st. And on the 22nd, I think they're driving out, and there's gonna be a big event around that too, because they're bringing, the idea is to bring Native people from India, Africa, and here to drive the trucks to Los Angeles, going through Utah, Arizona, stopping at some of the indigenous, meeting with some of the indigenous people along the way. They're not gonna be situated there, they're gonna be on the trucks, and then they're gonna, I think it's downtown LA, I don't know, after the fires, I don't know for sure where they're gonna go. So, we'll have to see about that, but that's the idea, to get them to the Pacific Ocean. So, that's all about that. So those are our 2 exhibits for the summer. I think these are gonna be rocking the house. I think we're gonna get a lot of people. The elephants, unfortunately, there'll be a short time, but they're gonna bring people in, and I think they will stay for the photography for sure. And hopefully our permanent collections.
Where is it they're gonna be installed?
Over here by the Loeffler elephants on the south side of our grounds, down below, kind of below the sculpture trail. And people can get out to them, they'll have to walk down to the sculpture trail and get to them, but we needed a flat space that they could sit on, and they're kind of screwed into the ground. So they didn't want to put them on the cement. So they didn't want to put them on the sculpture trail necessarily, and they didn't want to put them in the parking lot. So, and they can't put them on a hill unless they're going up, they can't be like this. So that's where we got. But you know, from the highway, great view.
Yes.
And they were thrilled that I said, you know, there's an elk refuge right across the highway from us. And this whole message of conservation that the elephants promote is really exciting. And it's conservation of all animals. So there'll be a lot of events around the opening of both of the shows. The big event, as Stephanie said, is going to be on May 30th. And there's going to be blessing for the elephants. And yeah, we're really excited. They're excited. Everybody is excited except Lori. Sorry, Lori, you're just like. I didn't mean to call you out, no. So, any other questions about any of the exhibits this summer? Oh, I'm sure it's still gonna be out here. I forgot I put that one in. The coyote and the rabbit. And yeah, that's good. I know what we know about that. So, great, thank you.
All we had for this meeting. I thank you all for your patience and your reception. Potluck lunch looks like it's getting ready by Jane, so whenever you guys are ready, that'll be good to go. And yeah. I'm calling it.
And thank you all for your patience. Hopefully we'll have, because Steve, the way it was set up, I couldn't get them to stand in front, but I'll be sending out pictures and things once I get their headshots. So thank you for your patience. I hope the technology will go better next time.
Thank you. Very informative.
I don't know what's wrong with my laptop. I cannot hear a thing, but thank you all for your patience. If you have any questions, please feel free to email me, and I'm going to share the meeting on the YouTube. So, oh, thanks everyone. If you'll let me in.